Hey, my name is Brent here on Cloudy with the Chance of Meeples. Welcome to Ideas. Welcome to a time where we sit down with publishers, designers, illustrators in the board gaming hobby and find out how they got their ideas from just ideas to the games that fill our endless shelving units in our houses that we love to play. And today we have a designer. We have Tam. How's it going, Tam?
Hey, it's going very well, thank you, and thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to chatting about games because that's one of my favorite things to do.
Right on. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about games growing up. To my understanding, you did not grow up in the United States, correct in
That's
that?
correct. That's correct. I was born in Burma, and I grew up in many different countries. My dad was a diplomat, and we traveled around a lot when I
Okay.
was young.
Okay. So what did board gaming look like for you, I guess, in Burma? Like, I don't want to be naive or have preconceived thoughts, but I would imagine m- board gaming and the board gaming hobby wasn't similar that it is in North America. Am I right in that? Like, or were there mass market games or like what did gaming look like for
Right,
you?
right. Well, not only did I grow up in Burma, but I grew up in a time during the socialist period in Burma. So everything was very scarce and board games were kind of unheard of. Of course, there's locally made games of Monopoly
Okay.
and cards and stuff like that. And there's Burmese chess. But other than that, isn't much of any board games from the West. But my aunt taught at the American school, and
Okay.
whenever foreigners leave, they would leave behind their stash of things that they don't want to carry back.
Hmm.
So, we get left with odd games, and
Right.
that made up some of my early collections of games.
Hmm. So what would have been some of these games that would have made up your early collection?
My cousin and I played a lot of role-playing Dungeons and Dragons, but it was just the two of us. So one would be the dungeon master, and the other person would be the entire party. So that was our Dungeons and Dragons experience.
Hmm. You know what? That is fascinating. And again, I don't want to sound naive or anything like that, but I've heard so many times that like D&D, I didn't grow up with D&D and it's just not something I'm drawn to, but that's fascinating to hear that something like D&D made that wide of an attract like a fan base. You know what I mean? That
Right, right,
like I think I'm thinking maybe this is just like Western world thinking like D&D, that's a North American thing, but clearly not.
right. And we didn't know what it was when we saw that book. That was very well-worn book
Hmm.
of Dungeons and Dragons that somebody left behind, and we read it. And of course, we were introduced to movies like E.T., where
Hmm.
there's snippets of Dungeons and Dragons. So we were just starving for any sort of these kind of things to create worlds and make stories and play games. So um, we spent a lot of time making up our own modules and stories and mini games around Dungeons and Dragons.
That's fantastic. So what are you playing these days? Or maybe let's go back a little bit. So you grew up in Burma. How long ago did you move to North America?
About in the in the mid '90s, so about
Okay.
30 years now. Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
what brought you to North America?
One of it was I went to school here, so I finished college in New York, and I continued working here.
Hmm.
So I've been living in the U.S. and particularly in New York for the last 30 years or so.
Okay. So did games always be part of your life, or was it there a time where, gaming wasn't something that you were interested in, like through like I guess middle school and university and all that stuff? Like, have you always been playing games?
Pretty much, but I would say being an only child, I got
Mm.
the game design bug pretty young. And I was more interested in designing games and making games than playing it because I spent a lot of time by myself.
Right.
So as a hobby, I would design games for my friends and family, and I did that through college and um, through my adult life. Um, and I didn't really know, and it was naive of me. I didn't really look up, and I didn't know that this huge community of board gaming existed.
Hmm.
So it was a bit of a shock when a friend of mine said, "Let's go to a board game convention." um, in the around 2020, and it's like, wait, there are board game conventions. So we went, of course, and then I saw lots of games, and I got introduced to board games, and I um, I caught the board game bug a second time
Right.
in more intensity at that point.
Hmm.
So even though I'd been designing games all my life, but it was more for my friends and family. Now I'm starting to see that it's something that I can do, and maybe I might want to publish, get one of my, make a commercial game,
Hmm.
publish my own game. So
Hmm.
I think I started around 2020. That's when I started designing for with the idea of being published.
Right. Hmm. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but I need to ask, since then, have you been back to like Burma, and has the landscape of board gaming changed at all? It probably has changed, but like to what degree has that changed?
Yeah, so I had been out of the country for a long time, and but I do go back. I have family there,
Hmm.
so um, sometimes I make it every year. Sometimes it may be a little bit longer. I was just there a few months ago, and the it has changed a lot
Hmm.
from when I was growing up. There, maybe about 5 years ago, when I went back, I started noticing that there's a board game cafe. That was the
Mm.
first board game cafe. And then there were more board game cafes.
Okay.
Um, I met local game designers who are interested in making their own games. And there's a little bit of a community. A lot of it comes from a lot of people who grew up abroad and they brought back
Mm.
their hobbies,
Right.
and that kind of grew.
Hmm. So what are you playing these days?
Oh, I try and play all sorts of games. I love studying game rules, and I love looking at trying out new mechanics. So
Hmm.
the last game I played at a game night was Fromage.
Okay.
It's really cool mechanics and aesthetics. I love that. I also got a chance to play Harmonies
Mm.
and the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring
Trick
trick-taking
taking.
game.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. Hmm.
yeah.
And how was that one?
That was great. I know Brian Bromula very well. He was the developer for one of my games, Crafting the Cosmos.
Okay.
So I had played a prototype, an early prototype a long time ago, and I thought it was a great idea. And this was the first time that I actually got a chance to play the final product.
Hmm.
And it's great to see it with all the beautiful art and everything.
Hmm. What were your thoughts on harmonies?
I liked it a lot. I think it was very beautiful. It's very similar to Cascadia in the feel of it,
Okay.
but I like the aesthetics of it better
Hmm.
because I feel like the cards are very beautiful and what you build is very beautiful.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite game?
That's going to be a tough one. uh,
Sorry to put you on the
I,
spot here.
I like games that are have interesting mechanics and that has this cooperative and competitive elements to it.
Okay.
And those are very difficult to do
Hmm.
well. And there are some games. I think one of my favorite uh, is Mark Kurtz's. It's a classic. What is it? Imperium 2050 or something. One of
Okay.
yeah, is it
Hmm.
2040 or 2050?
Okay.
But essentially, it's a rondel game where I don't know if you've played it, but it looks
No, I
like
haven't.
it looks like a world map. It looks like Risk, but it's not Risk. It's an economic strategy games with
Okay.
military units. So the objective is to make the most money.
Mm.
But in order to make the most money, um, it's you don't control the country. Well, you control the countries if you have the most shares in the country,
Okay.
and you might be controlling America at one point, and then somebody might buy the shares out of America, and maybe you're now controlling
Mm.
Europe. So you're not any particular country. You're
Okay.
just the back, um, the money person
Right.
essentially. And the way that one of the ways that you make money is you pitch nations against each other in war. So it's a very cynical,
Mm.
dark view of it, but it also leads to very interesting mechanics because you have to work with other nations, other players,
Right.
um, but you're at the same time you're competing.
Hmm. I'm gonna have to I'm writing this down. I'm gonna have to look into this. And I love talking to other designers and love talking to other people to find out what they are playing and what games they love because the hobby is so vast and some games are just overlooked, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
sometimes you just find these little diamonds in the rough that you or other people absolutely love, but maybe not everybody knows about them. So I'm gonna write that down because
Sure.
it sounds neat. Let's talk about some of your game designs. You said back in 2020 is kind of when you got into it to a degree, and to be honest, I've only played Monkey Palace of your designs currently, and I want to dive into that a little bit because, like Lego for me, and probably many around my age, like that speaks to like childhood toys. And I
Hmm.
grew up playing a boatload of Lego. And so
Uh-huh.
when I saw Monkey Palace, I was like, hey, this is kind of like an abstract game that bridges my two passions of like Brent growing up and Brent as an adult. And so
Uh-huh.
let's dive into Monkey Palace a little bit. Did this always, when you and David Gordon, right?
Yes.
When you guys started working on this, was it a Lego game from the beginning? Did like when you prototype, typically you're cutting out cards and whatnot. Like you probably had bins and bins and bins of prototype material to build this game. Like how did that work?
Yeah. So, short answer, yes, it has always been a Lego game,
Okay.
and we had been working with Asmodee on crafting the Cosmos.
Okay.
So we knew some people, Brian Bormula, I mentioned. We have been working closely with them. So when Lego and Asmodee started their collaboration to bring board games back with Lego,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they they made a call out to designers to submit their pitches, and we were introduced to this project by Brian.
Okay.
So I think it was pretty late in the game. I don't know exactly how many designers submitted. I would think it's a few hundred
Mm-hmm.
designs, and so there was a very specific set of requirements, as you might expect. You know, they want something that calls out to their target demographics.
Yep.
And David and I talked about it, and we discussed what Lego means for us.
Mm.
And for me specifically, I grew up in Burma, as I said, and I was very fortunate. My mom got me a basic Lego set from her
Mm.
boss. So she worked for the UN, and her boss asked what she wanted. And when I was very young, she said, "Oh, I wanted a Lego set for my son." So I was very fortunate to have this Lego set, a very basic set with
Mm-hmm.
basic bricks. And I built all sorts of plans. That was one of my treasured toys.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of structures that you can do with basic set is somewhat limited compared to what you can do now.
Right.
But I think it has a sense of beauty to it because the bricks are very simple.
Right.
Um, so I had an idea like maybe the game is about creating the rules to make a beautiful structure, and can we make a game out of it? So David has bins of Lego pieces that his kids played in his basement, and we went down and we played around with bricks, and we built something kind of like the structures that I built when I was young, and something that looks good. And we started making rules about how to get people to play this structure.
Right.
And again, back to my interest in this games which where you're a competitive, you need to compete, but it is also a collaborative
Mm,
experience.
yeah.
So we tried to incorporate that with this because you are competing for scores, but there's one central structure that you're building together.
Mm. Man, yeah, that's really cool. So how long did the game take to like when did you guys start this? Because it came out, I believe, in 2024. What was it a
Um,
long design process?
the the initial design and pitch was pretty quick. I think we came up with a design and put together a deck in about a month.
Wow.
Uh, and sometimes because we were under time pressure, we came late into the cycle, and we just needed to submit something.
Hmm.
And of course, we're going to submit something.
Right.
And
It's like
uh,
a almost once in a lifetime opportunity here, right?
right, and we were at the right time with the right idea,
Mm,
because we were competing against a lot of very talented designers and ideas as well. But we got selected, and then we went through a very intense cycle with Dotted Games, which is
okay.
the publisher, and Lego representatives from Lego, uh, for about, I'd like to say, close to a year,
Wow.
developing this. Lego has its own sets of things that they have to do to make sure that their product is safe and
Yeah.
accessible and all that stuff. And Dotted Games brings with them the experience of just making games for the for the mass market.
Hmm.
And we're new to games for the mass market at that point, so it was something new for us to learn as well.
Hmm. So you say us. So you did this with David Gordon, as I already mentioned. How did you get in contact with him? Like I've seen, obviously that, and you guys worked on game coming out like Scurry Up, and you've been collaborating with David, I guess, for a number of years now. But the fruits of your labor is starting to come into fruition that playable games are being able to be purchased. So where did you meet David and like how did that whole connection come out?
Sure. David is also a New Yorker,
Okay.
and we met at a local playtesting event just before the pandemic.
Okay.
And when the pandemic happened, all the playtests went online.
Mm-hmm.
And he was I had started collaborating with other designers before. Before that, I started out as designing solo, and that was not a lot of fun. So
Um,
I started collaborating with other people, and during the pandemic, as we're playtesting, we just so let's work on something together,
mhm.
and we started a few games, and we've figured out that we worked well together, partly because, well, I think there's a lot of factors. First, we live in the same city, so it's
Right.
very easy to meet. But also, we're around the same age, and we have the same passion and maybe time that we can devote
Mm,
to design,
right.
game design. And we're both very passionate about it. But we also bring different things to the table. We have slightly different skill sets, so we complement each other
Right.
in the design process. So we work well together. So we had been working on a few games then, and we had been actively working on crafting the cosmos, and that's when the Lego project
Okay.
started.
So is Craft in the Cosmos like was that the first design that you guys did together, or the first
No,
one that came out?
it is the first one that came. Well, Lego was the first one that came out,
Okay,
but
right.
crafting the Cosmos came. We started that before we started the Lego
Okay.
project.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. So if you could design a game with anybody, who would your dream collaboration be with?
Oh, that's going to be.
I
I
just thought
mean,
of that question on the spot.
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, there are a lot of game designers and game designs that I really look up to. Like, for instance, I was mentioning Imperium, uh, uh, and games that I like. I guess it also depends on the personality of the people.
Yep.
Even though I think that's kind of difficult to find as well.
Mm.
So I have started project with some people, and that doesn't work out for various reasons. So yeah, let me. Uh, well, anyway, um, um, I, I I just want to design games with different designers. So whoever that will give me the opportunity,
Hmm.
I would gladly at least give it a shot.
That's awesome. That's a very
Yeah,
humble way to look at it. That's fantastic.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about your working with David Gordon. You started Up Games.
Yes. So yes, Uncommons Publishing, Up Games. David and I started that with Greg May, who is uh, the third uh, partner, and later on we added Ammon Anderson. So there are four of
Mm.
us.
Okay.
Uh, Greg, David, and I are both in New York, and we initially conceived the idea of making games, accessible games that would be suitable for cafes, board game
Okay.
cafes,
Hmm.
because Greg is the owner of a chain of board game cafes in Manhattan
Okay.
and
Cool.
around the country. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I mean, did Gnome Hollow. I spoke with him last year. Uh,
yeah,
good guy. Really,
yeah.
really humble dude that I love the story behind Gnome Hollow. So it's cool to see him, you know, getting into this hobby more. So what does Up look like? What do you guys have coming out? Maybe 2025 or 2026, or what does the outlook look like for you guys?
Yeah. So our goal is to create one game a year,
Hmm.
at least for now. Uh, I love product design. I love seeing a product from idea, concept to a finished product, and I love finessing on the details and all that stuff. So that's for me personally. That's what drives me with Up.
Hmm.
And in 25, we just released Floristry, which is our first game. It's a two-player Dutch auction,
Hmm.
20-minute game, very easy to learn, like 2 minutes teach. It uses a phone web app to run a Dutch auction.
Okay.
26, we have in the final stages of a game called Scurry Up.
Okay.
It's 3 to 6 players, a bunch of squirrels going up a tree and collecting treats. So it's simultaneous area selection kind of game.
Hmm.
Um, so very different from forestry. And we're still working on the 27.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. So now that you've started this publishing company, are you now going to be looking for like partners back home in Burma to publish out there, or like how does that look? Are there even like
Um,
publishers in Burma?
yes, well, actually, so in 2019, I was back there. This is right before the pandemic. and the board game scene was booming. Uh, there were a lot of, and I met with the cafe owner there, and we decided to start a publishing company in Burma,
Hmm.
she and I. And we designed a game. We had to find a printer who could be retasked to make board games because there's no board game printing in Burma at
Hmm.
the time.
Right.
So this was like a printer who can make boxes or cake boxes and stuff like that. So we
Right.
retasked them. So we designed, printed, and published it in a month while I was there.
Wow.
So we started a company, and it was probably the quickest turnaround. So I was very proud of that.
Right.
And it was going to be a small box souvenir game. By souvenir game, it's something that you would buy in an airport as a souvenir,
Okay.
and it'll be a game that you can play by yourself or with friends. It'll be easy to carry. It's something you can give as a gift at a good price point, and I thought it was a really good idea. And we got into the airports, and then of course the pandemic hit.
Mm,
So, uh,
dang.
and then after that, there was a coup. So that kind of killed that
Oh
project.
man. Man.
Kind of a double whammy,
No kidding.
which unfortunately uh, had a huge toll on the emerging board game scene. So right now, there's not much going on at the moment, even though there are things starting to come back up, but it has been very challenging.
Hmm. Rightfully so. So that game that you put out in a month, was that your game? Like, was that a design of yours?
Yes.
Okay, so are you now looking for like a North American publisher for that game, or has it been published under
Possibly.
something else?
I mean, it still exists under our publishing company name from Burma, which no longer exists as a company.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really focused too much on it, and she has been really busy with other stuff as well. So it's kind of a back burner thing. I still think
Right.
it's a great idea, and we
Mm-hmm.
plan to take it to other countries and make different products like uh, for Thailand and other
Hmm.
countries in the area. So one day maybe.
That's cool. I love hearing your passion for like, you know, where you grew up and the hobby in general. And as we wrap up, got a few minutes left here. If people want to know more about floristry or any of your games like Scurry Up, where can they get a hold of that? Like online, like does Up Games have a website, things like that? Are you on social media? Is Up Games on social media? What does that look like? How can people find out more about your designs and upcoming designs?
Certainly. So you can find me uh, at TAM at Play. That's TAMATPLAY. That's my website. That's my social media handles on Facebook and X and
Hmm.
all the stuff. Same thing with Up Games. So it'll be Up Games at Play. That's a website and
Okay.
social media handles. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will post links to those websites
Thank you.
and those handles in the description of this video. And this has been fun, Tam. This has been awesome, and time has flown by here. And I'm just I'm honored to have a chance to chat with other designers, and I love hearing other people's stories. And so often I share this so often on this ideas segment. So often we go to games, our game stores, and we buy games. I You can see the plethora behind me, and we just think, oh, it's just another game. But really, there's a story behind each one of these boxes that are on these shelves, right? And there's people who invested time into creating that story per se. I know it's not a story, but you know what I mean. Um, just the journey that designers go through is fascinating to hear, and I love hearing the ins and outs and hearing how, I guess, North American culture and gaming made an influence on you and how many other potential designers that are in other countries around the world, that maybe haven't been given the opportunity or haven't been given the chance to use that creativity to build relationships and foster community in that way in that way. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that there.
No, that's absolutely true. And as you said, I can talk about games and game design for hours, and I'm very happy to get a chance to share a little bit about my personal experience. And thank you for making that possible.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time and thanks for sharing. This is fantastic. I firmly believe that games are built on ideas just like communities built on conversations. I said that backwards. But, anyways, I do believe that conversation is communities built on conversation, just like games are built on ideas. So,
Yeah.
Tam, thanks so much again for taking the time.
Hmm. Brent,
And,
have
and
a great evening. Yeah.
right on. Until next time, my name is Brent. Grab your umbrella. The forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.